40 years at sea. 40 years of watches and storms and fog and ice and the particular loneliness of open water in the middle of the night when the sky and the ocean are the same dark and there is nothing between you and the edge of the world except the ship beneath your feet. In 40 years you have never lost a passenger, not one. This is your last voyage. You promised. You are standing on the bridge of the largest ship ever built, and the water is coming in, and 2,200 people are on this ship, and every one of them is your responsibility, and every one of them knows your name. You gave the order to lower the boats 20 minutes ago. You already know there are not enough boats. You have known this since Thomas Andrews looked at you in the cargo hold with the water already at his knees and told you what you already knew. You are the captain. You stay. Edward John Smith was 62 years old on the night the Titanic sank. He had been at sea since he was 13. He had commanded more ships than most men ever sail on, had crossed the Atlantic more times than he had counted, had guided steel hulls through fog and ice and gales that lesser captains would have turned back from. He was the most celebrated ocean liner captain of his era. The papers called him the millionaire's captain because the wealthy passengers of the White Star Line requested him by name, crossed only when he was at the helm. He had commanded the Olympic, the Mauretania, the Adriatic, the Baltic. Each new ship, the grandest of its day, had been given to Smith. The Titanic was his last. He had told his wife Eleanor that this was the one. After this crossing, he would come home and stay home. Yet his daughter Helen was growing up without him in the weeks he spent at sea, and there were only so many weeks a man had, and he had given enough of them to the ocean. He had a retirement planned, a quiet house, mornings that were not watches, a garden, perhaps, time. On the night of April 14th, 1912, Edward Smith stood on the bridge of the ship that was supposed to end his career and watched the water rising and gave the orders that needed to be given and did not leave. He was the captain. Captains do not leave. This is not a story about whether the right decisions were made. There will be inquiries for that, testimonies and findings, and the particular cold light that official investigations cast over human decisions made in darkness and greed. This is a story about what it felt like to stand at the center of it, and to be the one whose name was on the ship. In this story, you are the captain. The ship is yours. Every soul on it is yours. This is the weight of that. You were 13 years old when you first understood what the ocean was. Not when you first saw it. You had seen it before, on a childhood trip to the coast. The gray English Channel throwing itself at the cliffs, with the indifferent energy of something that had been doing this long before you arrived, and would continue long after. That was impressive. But it was not understanding. Understanding came on the first ship, the Senator Weber, out of Liverpool. Your first berth as a boy seaman, your hands still soft enough that the ropes left marks that lasted days. The ship moved out of the harbor, and the land fell away behind you. And then there was a moment. Specific, unforgettable. At the moment that shaped everything after. When you looked back and the land was gone. Gone completely. In every direction. Water. The sky above and the water below and the ship between them, moving, and you standing on the deck of it with the wind and the particular vastness of the world opening around you in a way that was terrifying and magnificent in equal measure. You were not afraid. This surprised you. You had expected fear. Your mother had expected fear, had pressed food into your hands when you left, as if food could protect against what she imagined you would find out there. But what you found was not frightening. It was clarifying. The ocean reduced everything to its essentials. The ship, the water, the people on the ship, the work that kept them alive. Everything else fell away. The complications of land, the confusions of ordinary life, gone. Out here there was only what mattered, You were 13 years old and you understood for the first time what your life was going to be. 49 years later, you understand it differently. The ocean is not clarifying. The ocean is indifferent. It does not care about the ships that cross it or the people those ships carry, or the experience of the captains who have given their lives to reading its moods and currents. It is water, very deep, very cold, very large water, and it will be here long after the last ship has rusted and the last sailor has gone to ground. What you mistook for clarity at 13 was youth, the particular confidence of a boy who has not yet been shown what the world can do. You have been shown since. You have been shown many times. You are standing on the bridge of the Titanic, and you are being shown again. You are 62 years old and you are not afraid. But you are no longer 13, and you know exactly what the water is. The bridge of the Titanic is the highest point of human authority on this ship, and also the loneliest. You have stood on bridges for 40 years and you have never grown accustomed to this particular quality of the position, the way it separates you from the people you command. Not by rank only, but by something more fundamental, by the nature of what you carry. The officers below you carry their duties. The crew carry their tasks. You carry all of it, all 2,200 of them, from the moment you take the helm until the moment you give it up. From the bridge, you can see the length of the ship stretching ahead of you. Or you could, in daylight, the 4 funnels, the 2 masts, the vast forward deck, with its capstans and hatches and the particular geometry of a vessel designed for one purpose, which is to cross the ocean without stopping. At night you see the running lights and the glow of the portholes below and the shape of the bow against the dark water. You know this ship. You have spent 4 days learning it, as you learn every ship you command, not from the technical drawings alone, though you have studied those, but through the accumulated knowledge of being on it. The way a captain absorbs a vessel through his feet and his hands, and the specific vibration that every ship transmits differently. The Titanic transmits differently from the Olympic, her sister, which you also commanded. Larger, heavier, something in the engine note that is almost imperceptibly lower. You know her speed, you know her turning radius, you know how long she takes to stop from full ahead, which is longer than anyone who has not commanded a ship of this size would believe. You know all of this. On the night of April 14th, you are standing on the bridge and you know all of this, and it is not enough. The thing about command that they cannot teach you, that no training and no experience fully prepares you for, is the specific weight of being the one who decides. Not the decisions themselves. The decisions are often straightforward, or at least clear. The right course visible, if you have the information and the judgment to read it. The weight is something else. It is the knowledge that when you decide, everyone on this ship lives inside that decision. 2,200 people, sleeping or eating or playing cards or putting their children to bed. None of them thinking about the bridge. None of them thinking about you. All of them trusting, without knowing they are trusting, that the man at the top of this ship is making the right choices. That weight does not get lighter with experience. If anything, it gets heavier. You have been carrying it for 40 years. Tonight it is heavier than it has ever been. The first days were good. Southampton to Cherbourg to Queenstown. The stops made and the final passengers boarded, and the Titanic heading out into the open Atlantic, with the particular momentum of a ship finally doing what it was built to do. The weather had been kind, cold but clear, the sea cooperative, the kind of crossing that reminds you why you chose this life, when the ocean decides to be magnificent rather than difficult. You walked the ship in those first days the way you always walk a new command, not performing inspection, but absorbing, learning, reading the vessel the way you read a person, for what it is beneath the surface. You talk to the engineers. You talk to the senior officers. You talk to Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, who was aboard to note any improvements needed after the maiden voyage. A quiet, methodical man who knew every rivet in this hull and spoke about the ship with the particular affection of someone who had built something they believed in. The passengers were in good spirits. You had dinner in the first-class saloon each evening, as was expected of a captain of the White Star Line. The ritual of the captain's table, the conversation about the ship and the voyage and the things that wealthy people talked about in 1912, which were not entirely different from what they talk about now. Business, politics, the extraordinary luxury of the ship itself, which seemed to surprise even people who had expected to be surprised. You were good at this part of the job. You had learned to be. The social obligations of command, the dinners, the conversations, and the particular skill of making 200 different people feel that they had your individual attention. These had not come naturally to a man who had spent his formative years on working ships where no one expected the captain to make conversation at dinner. But you had learned the way you had learned everything the sea required of you. On Sunday afternoon you felt, for a moment, the specific contentment of a man who is doing the last of something well. The crossing was proceeding beautifully. The ship was everything Andrews said it was. In 5 days you would see New York, and in a few weeks you would see Southampton for the last time from the bridge of a White Star liner. And then you would go home. You thought about Eleanor. You thought about Helen. You thought, nearly done. Nearly home. Though there is a particular bittersweet quality to the last time you do something you have done for most of your life. You feel it on this crossing. Not constantly, not heavily, but in moments. The particular quality of the bridge at dawn. The light changing over the water the way it only changes over open ocean. And the knowledge that you are seeing this for nearly the last time. The sound of the engines below you, which you have felt through your feet on 100 ships. And the understanding that soon you will feel it for the last time, and then stand on land and feel nothing through your feet but earth. You have given the ocean 40 years. It is time to give Eleanor the rest. She has waited with a patience that you have never fully deserved and have always been grateful for. The weeks at sea, the missed Christmases, had the evenings alone while you were somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, thinking about home. She kept the house. She raised Helen. She wrote letters that arrived at ports around the world, and that you read in your cabin at night with the ship moving beneath you, and the specific ache of distance. 5 more days. You told yourself this on Sunday afternoon, standing at the railing, watching the wake spread out behind you. 5 more days and then home. The first warning came from the Coronia in the morning. Ice reported. Bergs, growlers, and field ice in latitude 42 north, between longitudes 49 west and 51 west. The position was noted and filed, and the course continued. This was not unusual. Ice warnings in the North Atlantic in April were not unusual. The lanes shifted. The conditions were known. The experienced captains adjusted their understanding of the ice picture and proceeded with appropriate awareness. The Baltic sent another warning at noon. More ice, further positions. The wireless operator brought it to you, and you read it and put it in your pocket. And at some point during the afternoon, you showed it to J. Bruce Ismay, the managing director of the White Star Line, who was aboard for the maiden voyage. This was a courtesy, not a consultation. Ismay was not a sailor, yet he was the man whose company owned the ship, who had a keen interest in the crossing making good time, whose presence on the bridge was always slightly complicated by the particular tension between ownership and command. More warnings came through the afternoon. The America, the Mezaba, each one noting ice in the area ahead, each one adding to a picture that, assembled, showed a field of ice across the route. You did not slow down. This is the decision that will be examined and re-examined in every inquiry, in every book written about this night, in every conversation that tries to understand how a ship of this quality sank on its maiden voyage. Why did Smith not slow down? The ice warnings were there. The conditions, the flat calm, the moonless night, and the cold that meant ice would not show its usual white froth at the waterline were exactly the conditions that experienced sailors knew made ice more dangerous, not less. You did not slow down. The reasons are complex, and they are yours, and they are what they are. The confidence of 40 years without a catastrophe. The expectations of the crossing. The particular psychology of a man who has navigated these waters many times and has never yet found the ice where the warnings said it would be. Who has learned through experience to treat ice reports as approximate rather than precise. The understanding, widespread, not yours alone, that the Titanic was the finest ship ever built. That even in the event of a collision, her watertight compartments made her effectively unsinkable. You did not slow down. You will carry this. And a decision made in one context looks different in another context. On the afternoon of April 14th, the decision to maintain speed was consistent with standard practice, with your experience, with the understanding of the ship and the crossing that you carried into that afternoon. It was not a reckless decision. It was a decision that hundreds of captains had made in similar situations and had been proved right by the absence of consequences. The consequences came this time. This is what you will carry. Not the certainty that you were wrong, because certainty in either direction is not available to you, but the weight of the outcome. 2,200 people on your ship, and the ice where it was, and the speed you were making, and the night ahead. You did not slow down. You will carry this for the rest of your life. The rest of your life is now measurable in hours. The dinner on Sunday evening is the best of the crossing. The first-class saloon is at its most magnificent. The table settings, the food, the specific warmth of a room full of people who are at ease, who have spent 4 days settling into the luxury of the ship and have arrived at the comfort of people who feel entitled to exactly this. You move through the room with the practiced ease of 40 years of captain's dinners. Your uniform correct, your manner the perfect calibration of authority and warmth. You know many of these people. The Astors. Colonel John Jacob Astor, the wealthiest man on the ship. A man of quiet good manners who has always struck you as more thoughtful than his fortune would require him to be. Benjamin Guggenheim, who is charming in the particular ways of men who have so much that charm has become a form of generosity. Margaret Brown, the Colorado mining heiress who is called Molly, and who speaks to you frankly, and without the social performance, that most of the first-class passengers bring to their interactions with the captain. You eat with them, and you talk with them, and you listen to their conversations, and you think about Eleanor, not with longing, not exactly, more with the particular awareness of a man who has been away a long time and can feel the approach of return. Eleanor at home in the house in Southampton, the particular smell of that house, the sound of it in the morning when the city is quiet. Helen's room, which you have seen change from a child's room to a young woman's room over the years of crossings. The evidence of growth accumulating in your absences. You finish dinner at 9:30 and excuse yourself to the bridge. The air outside hits you after the warmth of the saloon, cold and clean and absolute. The specific cold of the open North Atlantic on a clear night. You breathe it in and feel the familiar clarity of it and look up at the stars, which are extraordinary tonight. And then you look at the sea, which is flat and dark and perfectly, unusually still. You look at the sea for a long moment, then you go inside. Later, people will ask what you were thinking in those last hours before the collision, whether you sensed something, whether the experience of 40 years at sea gave you some foreknowledge that the night ahead was different from the thousands of nights before it. The honest answer is no. The sea was calm. But the ship was running well. The crossing was nearly complete. What you were thinking about in the last normal hour of your life was Eleanor and Helen and the house in Southampton and the garden you had decided you were going to keep. The specific pleasure of being the kind of man who has time for a garden. You were thinking about ordinary things. The extraordinary thing was 40 minutes away. You are in your quarters when the ship strikes the ice. Not asleep. You have not slept yet. The habit of decades keeping you alert at this hour. Your body maintaining the watch even when you are not formally on it. You feel the collision through the walls of the ship, through the floor, a vibration that you read in less than a second, and are already moving before the reading is finished. The bridge, in 30 seconds. The officer of the watch, First Officer Murdoch, his face composed in the specific way of a man managing an emergency, with the training that is supposed to manage emergencies, already giving orders to the helmsman, already reaching for the engine telegraph. What have we struck? An iceberg, sir. I hard a-starboarded and reversed the engines, but she was too close. I couldn't avoid her. You look at the sea ahead. At the iceberg, whatever size it was, is gone now into the dock behind you, left behind by the ship's momentum. The sea is as it was, flat, still, the stars above it perfectly indifferent. The ship feels wrong, not dramatically wrong. She is still upright, still moving, the engines doing what engines do. But you have commanded enough ships to know the feel of a hull that is sound and the feel of a hull that is not. And something in the quality of the ship beneath your feet has changed. A deadness where there was life. A subtle wrongness in the way she sits on the water. You send for the carpenter. You send for Thomas Andrews. You wait. There is a specific quality to waiting when you already know what the answer is going to be. You stand on the bridge, and you look at the sea, and you feel the ship, and you know. Not the details. Not the extent of the damage. Not the rate of flooding. Not the precise number of minutes you have. But the essential fact. The fact that is already present in the way the ship feels beneath you. The fact that 40 years of reading ships has made as legible as text. She is hurt. She is hurt badly. The rest is arithmetic. Andrews comes to you 40 minutes after the collision. You have been with him through the ship, down into the lower decks, into the spaces that the passengers never see. The working interior of the vessel. The pipes and the pumps and the watertight compartments that were supposed to make this ship unsinkable. The water is already there when you arrive. Not a flood, not yet, but present, rising, patient. The kind of water that knows it has time. You look at the compartments. Now you look at the bulkheads. You look at Andrews. Andrews is a man who does not soften information. This is one of the things you respect about him. He built this ship, knows it more intimately than anyone alive, and he will tell you what the ship is telling him, without the modifications that less honest men apply to bad news. He tells you, 5 compartments breached. The Titanic can float with 4. 5 is one more than she can survive. The water will rise in the breached compartments until it spills over the tops of the bulkheads and fills the next compartments, and then the next. A progression as inevitable as arithmetic, as unstoppable as the ocean itself. How long? You ask. He looks at you. He does the thing that Andrews does, which is to take a moment before he speaks to make certain that what he says is accurate, that he is giving you the best information available, rather than the information that would be easier to hear. An hour, he says. Perhaps 2. Not much more. You stand in the flooding lower deck of the Titanic with the architect who built her, and you receive this information. An hour, perhaps 2, 2,200 people. Lifeboats for 1,200. You nod. You go back up to the bridge. You begin. There is no adequate preparation for this moment. 40 years of command, every training and every experience leads you to this. A number of people you cannot save and a number of boats that cannot hold them. and the arithmetic that lives in the gap between those two numbers. You do not allow yourself to stay in the arithmetic. The arithmetic is what it is, and you cannot change it, and standing in it will not help anyone. And what helps anyone is the orders, the actions, the specific practical work of the next 2 hours. The wireless sending SOS, the rockets going up, the boats going down. You give yourself 30 seconds with the arithmetic. Then you begin giving orders. This is what a captain does. This is all captain can do. The first order is to the wireless room. Phillips and Bride, the 2 operators, young men, young enough to be your grandsons almost, sitting at their equipment with the particular focused attention of people who understand that what they are doing matters. You give them the position, the nature of the emergency, the instruction to send the distress signal. They begin sending. They will not stop until it is no longer possible to send. The second order is to the officers. Uncover the boats. The third order, to the crew, and then to the passengers through the crew. Life belts on. Women and children to the boat deck. You give these orders with the voice you have developed over 40 years, which carries without shouting, which communicates authority without communicating panic. Because panic is the thing that cannot happen. Because if panic happens, people die who didn't have to die, and the boats don't fill, and the order breaks down, and the arithmetic becomes worse than it already is. You walk the deck. This is the part that no order covers. The presence of the captain among his people. The visibility of the person who is responsible for all of this. Moving through the crowd, not directing, but simply being there. People see you, and they settle fractionally. The way people settle when authority appears. When the person who is supposed to be in charge is demonstrably in charge. You stop at a woman standing at the railing with a baby on her hip. A third-class passenger who has come up from the lower decks and is looking at the lifeboats with an expression that contains everything she cannot say. "Your boat is there," you tell her. And point to the officer at the nearest davit. "Go now, they'll help you." She goes. The baby looks at you over her shoulder as she moves away. The wide, uncomprehending eyes of an infant for whom none of this has meaning yet. You watch them go. You keep walking. The boats are not filling fast enough. This is the thing that is happening that you cannot entirely fix. The passengers are not understanding the urgency, or they are understanding it, but the ship still feels solid beneath their feet. Still feels like safety compared to the dark water so far below, and the small wooden boats swinging on their ropes. And so they are standing on the deck in their evening clothes and their life belts and not getting in. The first boats go down half empty. You will learn this later, in the cold arithmetic of the inquiry. Boats that could have held 60 or 70 carrying 20, 30, because in the early minutes the passengers did not believe what was happening. The ship believed it. The ship was already telling anyone who knew how to listen. You knew how to listen. You had known since Andrews looked at you in the flooded lower deck. But you cannot make 2,000 people believe what one captain believes. You walk, you direct, you tell them to get in the boats. Some of them do, some of them do not. The boats go down. There is a child sitting on a coil of rope near the forward davits. She is perhaps 5 years old. She is wearing a life belt that is too large for her, the straps hanging loosely, and she is holding something in her lap. A toy, a doll, something small and important. She is not crying. She is simply sitting, with the particular stillness of a child who has been told to stay and is staying, waiting for the adult who told her to stay to come back. No adult comes. You stop. You look around the deck, which is thinning now. The boats having taken their passengers, the crowd smaller than it was an hour ago, but the smallness of it meaning something different now than it would have meant then. The people still on this deck are here because they could not get to a boat, or because a boat would not take them, or because they made a choice, or because, like this child, they are waiting for someone who is not coming back to them. You crouch down in front of her. She looks at you. A 62-year-old man in a captain's uniform, crouching on the deck of a sinking ship in the middle of the night. And she looks at you with the directness that children have before they learn to look away. "Where is your mother?" you ask. She points at the water, not dramatically and not with grief, because she is 5 and grief of that kind has not yet found its full shape in her. Just points, as if answering a question about direction. You look at where she is pointing, a lifeboat already on the water below, already being rowed away from the ship. You cannot see the individual faces from here. You do not know if her mother is in that boat or if the pointing means something else. Is something you cannot pass from the gesture of a 5-year-old in the dark. You pick her up. She is light. Children are always lighter than you expect. She settles against your shoulder with the automatic trust of a child being carried by an adult, the life belt awkward between you, her small hand finding your collar. You carry her to the nearest officer. "Find this child a boat," you say. He takes her. She looks back at you over his shoulder as he carries her away, the same direct look, and then they are gone into the crowd and you turn back to the deck. You do not know what happened to her. The records are incomplete. Many of the children who survived the Titanic were separated from their families in the chaos of the boats and reunited only later, on the Carpathia, or in the days after in New York. Some were not reunited.
Traveled under names that weren't theirs, identified by the officers who put them in boats, or the women who held them during the crossing. You will not know.
You will not be there for the accounting. What you know is the weight of her against your shoulder, the small hand on your collar, the pointing at the water. You carry this too. You carry all of it. The last boats are gone. The deck is nearly empty now. The officers who remain, the crew who remain, a scattering of passengers who were not reached or would not go. The bow of the ship is deep in the water, so deep that you can see it from here. The angle unmistakable now. The ship no longer pretending to be level. She is going bow first, the way a ship goes when the bow is heavier than the stern, the way the physics of it dictates regardless of what anyone would prefer. You go to the wireless room. Phillips is still at the key, still sending. The signal weaker now, the power failing, the generators fighting the water that has reached them, but still sending. The dots and dashes going out into the dark where they may reach someone and may not. "You can stop now," you tell him. "Every man for himself." Phillips looks up at you. Yet he is 25 years old. He has been sending for 2 hours without stopping. "I'll keep sending," he says. You look at him for a moment. "God be with you," you say. You go. You walk back through the ship. The corridors are empty in a way that corridors are not supposed to be empty. The emptiness having a quality different from the ordinary emptiness of a late-night passage. The quality of absence, rather than quiet. The stateroom's empty, the dining saloon empty, the grand staircase with its carved oak and its glass dome. The water already climbing the lower steps, the lights still burning above it in the dome, the chandelier still burning, the whole magnificent space, lit and empty and tilting. You go to the bridge. You stand at the helm where you have stood for 4 days and you look at the dark ocean and the dark sky. People will say later that they saw you in the water, that you swam, that you tried to reach a boat, that you went back toward the ship rather than away from it. The accounts conflict, as accounts of chaos always conflict. Each survivor carrying their own fragment of the night and assembling from it the story they need to carry. What is known is that your body was never recovered. What is known is that you did not leave the bridge. What is known is that the Titanic's captain, on the night his ship went down, was last seen where a captain is supposed to be. You stayed. This was not heroism, or it was heroism, but heroism of the quiet kind, not the kind that charges forward, but the kind that simply does not move. The kind that understands what its position requires and provides it to the end, without making a speech about it. You stayed. It's known somewhere in 40 years of command that this was what staying meant. The water reaches the bridge at 20 minutes past 2. Not rushing. The ocean does not rush. It arrives with the patience of something that has all the time in the world, which it does, which it always has. It comes over the threshold and spreads across the floor in the particular way of water, finding its level, finding every corner, filling every space with the thorough completeness of something that knows its purpose. Cold. The cold of it, even through your boots, is extraordinary. The North Atlantic in April at 2 in the morning. A cold that is not about temperature so much as about depth. The specific cold of water that has been in the dark for a very long time. You are standing at the helm. You think about Eleanor. Not dramatically, not with the performed emotion of a man composing his last thoughts for an audience. Simply, Eleanor. The specific reality of her, the way she is present in your mind, not as an image or a memory, but as a person, as alive and particular as anyone you have ever known. The sound of her voice when she is tired, the way she holds her cup of tea with both hands in the morning, the letter she will receive, the letter that someone will have to write. You think about Helen, 17 years old, your daughter, growing up in the house in Southampton with her mother's patience and your stubbornness and a laugh that has been surprising you since she was old enough to have a laugh of her own. You will not see her married. You will not be there for the things that fathers are supposed to be there for, the ordinary things, the things that seem small until you understand you are not going to have them. You had promised to come home. You are sorry for the promise you cannot keep. The water rises, 40 years at sea, 40 years of this, the ocean, the ships, the crossing and the returning, the particular life of a man who has given himself to the water. The Baltic and the Olympic and the Adriatic and 100 ships before those, and the Senator Weber, the first one, the one where you stood on the deck at 13 years old and watched the land disappear and understood what your life was going to be. You understood correctly. This is what it was going to be. This is what it is. There is a kind of peace that comes when you have done everything that can be done. Not happiness, not resignation exactly, something more specific. The particular stillness that follows the last action. When the orders are given and the boats are gone and the decisions are behind you and there is nothing left to do but be here, in this place, in this moment, with the water around your feet and the stars above the dome of the bridge and the ship going down beneath you. You have been a sailor for 49 years. The ocean gave you everything. The ocean is taking it back. This is the agreement. This is what you signed when you were 13 years old and stood on the deck of the Senator Weber and watched the land go. Not in words, in something older than words. You knew this day existed. You chose it anyway. Every morning for 49 years you chose it. The water rises. The stars are very bright. Good night, Captain. Good night. The bridge is quiet. The stars are out. Somewhere in the dark, the lifeboats are rowing toward morning. You put them there. You gave every order that could be given. You stayed. The ocean knows your name. It has known your name for 49 years. Close your eyes. The watch is over. A note of history. Edward John Smith was born in Hanley, Staffordshire in 1850. He went to sea at 13 and joined the White Star Line in 1880, working his way up through the ranks to become the company's most senior and celebrated captain. He commanded many of the great liners of the era, including the Majestic, the Baltic, the Adriatic, and the Olympic. The Titanic was intended to be his retirement voyage. He had reportedly told friends and colleagues that he planned to step down from active service after the maiden crossing. He was 62 years old. The ice warnings received by the Titanic on April 14th were numerous and specific. At least 6 separate warnings were received from other ships in the area. The Titanic did not reduce speed. Yet the reasons for this decision have been debated ever since. Standard practice at the time gave precedence to schedules. The confidence in the ship's design was widespread, and Smith's 40 years without catastrophe gave him a confidence in his own judgment that the night would not vindicate. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, accompanied the voyage to observe the ship's performance. When Smith brought him below to assess the damage after the collision, Andrews surveyed the flooded compartments and calculated that the ship had approximately 1 hour to 2 hours before sinking. His estimate proved accurate. The Titanic sank at 2:20 a.m., 2 hours and 40 minutes after the collision. Edward Smith's last hours are reconstructed from the accounts of surviving officers and crew, which are often contradictory. Yet he is reported to have visited the wireless room multiple times, to have walked the deck, encouraging passengers into boats, and to have been seen near the bridge as the ship went down. His body was never recovered. The phrase attributed to him, "Be British," is reported by some survivors as his final instruction to the crew and passengers, an appeal to composure in the face of the end. Other survivors do not recall it. Whether he said it or not, it captures something true about the man as he has come down to us. A person who believed in the old obligations, who understood his position to carry responsibilities that did not end when the ship began to fail. His wife Eleanor and daughter Helen received the news in Southampton. Eleanor Smith never fully recovered from the loss. She died in 1931. Helen lived until 1973. And the last surviving close relative of the Titanic's captain, Smith, is buried nowhere. The ocean has him. This seems right. He stayed. Good night.